We all gas, no brakes, pumped up, no fakes. We spinning, we winning, we high stakes. We never miss, we all makes. Look at us dudes trying to prove, bringing you news with nothing to lose. Mike, Nick, Tony, Wayne, Method Man, we bring the pain. Hey, see, I'ma confess it. We under the pressure. If you looking to find us, we them nothing but Niners. Nothing but Niners. We nothing but Niners. We nothing but Niners. We nothing but we them nothing but Niners.
What is going on, faithful? Thank you for joining into another Nothing But Niners podcast here. I am your host, 49er Faithful 365, also known as Nick. I am also joined by my guy, NY to the Bay, as you guys all know, and a special guest who is right down there beside me. That's Brian Peacock. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing fantastic, fellas. How are you?
I'm doing well. Before we get into the nitty-gritty type of 49ers talk here, guys, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Give us a follow on all social media platforms. That's at Nothing But Niners on Twitter, at Nothing But Niners, all spelled out, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitch as well. And hit that like and subscribe button. Set your bell for notifications so if you bring you any impromptu shows, you know where to find us. So let's get down to this and break this down. Brian, once again, I appreciate you jumping on and joining us tonight. It's our pleasure. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pumped for it. The draft is nuts. I've been super busy, and it's a crazy time. Like, the draft is already weird and fun and exciting, right? And you get worked up for it, and there's so many angles to cover. But with the trade up to number 3, this is massive. This is historic. And I know Kyle Shanahan tried to downplay it a little bit, say there's always pressure when it comes to this thing. No, this is different, man. This is a different deal for the 49ers. This is one of the most important weekends in the history of the franchise, especially for younger fans that haven't followed the team very long. I mean, this is bigger than 2005 with the Alex Smith, Aaron Rodgers decision at number 1 overall.
It definitely is. And, before we get to Mike here, but it's kind of crazy because I was listening to your podcast the other day, and, you said that this is one of probably the most important decisions in 49ers tenure, going back to draft day. This is going to go down in the history books one way or the other. It's going to be a really good pick or it's going to be a really bad pick, and the 49ers are going to have to deal with it either way. There is a lot of magnitude to this, right? It's okay. We're picking at 12. And everything's all fine and dandy. And, okay, we're probably going to go for a quarterback because John Lynch was stating earlier in the year, well, we're trying to upgrade our backup quarterback position, And then all of a sudden, boom, this trade comes out of nowhere. Yeah. And the 49ers trade up from 12 to 3, making it that much more of a magnitude. And now 49ers Twitter, 49ers Instagram, 49ers land just in general is like, oh, my God, who's it going to be? Media is all talking about Mac Jones. Niners fans don't want Mac Jones. Too much to trade up for to draft a guy like Mac Jones. These are all athletic quarterbacks. They are all college quarterbacks who played really, really well. But, I just wanted to touch base on what you were saying on your podcast the other night and the other day when I was listening, and that was that how important this pick really is. And like you said, you just stated that. Kyle Shanahan definitely tried to downplay the whole position.
Yeah. He definitely tried to downplay that. But he's right. There is always pressure, and there's always going to be fan pressure, and fans don't always love the picks that a team makes. And famously, fans are very wrong a lot of the time. But as we know, teams are also very wrong a lot of the time as well. I think you got to go back to Young in Montana days, right? Trading away Joe Montana, the last time there was something this big. And I think that was met with a certain amount of fear from fans. Probably it's like Joe Montana took us to Super Bowls, and you're going to send him off when he's 10 years younger than Tom Brady is right now when they did that move, right? And I barely remember that. I remember it was a big deal, but it was also like Steve Young was so good too, and the 49ers stayed good and still won a Super Bowl with Steve Young, so that was pretty monumental. This is different because you're not like Jimmy Garoppolo's no Joe Montana as far as 49ers fans are concerned, and they don't have that attachment. Although when you go into the stadium, you go into Levi's, there's number 10 jerseys everywhere. Whoever they draft, they're going to be a number of those jerseys too. You know, like people don't care. And there's a loud majority of folks on, say, Twitter that hate Mac Jones, that don't want him to be drafted. And if this was a second round pick, then they would love Mac Jones and they would be thankful that the 49ers drafted him, right? So that's sort of the dichotomy here when you trade up and you draft a player early, how much different that is than if you just let a player fall to you at 12, or in my opinion, partially my fault for some fans, I think, and a lot of us that are pushing the narrative that it's like, it can't be Mac Jones, right? Like, it really can't be Mac Jones. You don't trade up to number 3 for Mac Jones. And I've been in that camp, and I started to believe it. Like, I never believed it was like, this is going to be Justin Fields, obviously. Like, why it's Justin Fields. And there would be more reports. It's like, oh, it's Mac Jones. No, it's Justin Fields. And Monday, hearing them talk, then it was the first time for real that I thought, oh my gosh, it is really going to be Mac Jones. Are they really going to do this? And back to your point, yeah, this is monumental. This is so massive. This is the biggest moment I can remember, the biggest impactful moment, because they didn't just earn the 3rd pick where it's like, well, we got to draft somebody here. They're spending 3 picks, 3 firsts and a 3rd. So 4 total picks, but 3 first-round picks. That's an eternity away that the 49ers have their next first-round pick in 2024, right? It's going to make my job more difficult, first of all. Next offseason, talking about the draft when there's no first-round pick. I just thought about that. That's going to suck a little bit, actually. But it's so huge because of the trade-up, because of what they had to give up. And Kyle Shanahan, it was interesting, him talking in the press conference about what it takes. He's like, yeah, you got to have a starting quarterback. I was like, you got a starting quarterback already. Like, you better hope this is a superstar quarterback, because teams don't trade 3 first-round picks for anybody. It didn't cost the Chiefs 3 first-round picks to go from 27 all the way up to number 10 to draft Patrick Mahomes. Like, that's not a thing that happens. And Kyle Shanahan kind of acted like, oh, this happens all the time. People always give away 3 first-round picks for anybody. And it just doesn't happen. So this is huge. The 49ers will be set back if this player isn't great. And if this player is great, then I think a lot of people probably won't remember exactly what the trade parameters were, because you got this superstar quarterback. So it's really important. And look, this is the way I've always put it, and I think this is the best way to put it. If they get this wrong, then when the 49ers do have a first-round pick again in 2024, they won't be the ones making it. It won't be John Lynch, and it won't be Kyle Shanahan, period. That's the way I feel about it. And it's almost like they have to get it right, too, for a big portion of the fan base. You can't just get a good quarterback here. You almost have to nail it now, because you let everybody pick their favorite and Photoshop their favorite guy in a 49ers uniform. You almost have to nail it and get the best guy of the 3, because if you draft a guy who's just good and say Justin Fields goes somewhere else and is a superstar, then even though you kind of got the pick right, you still got it wrong in a lot of fans' eyes.
Yeah. You said something in there that caught me in that presser, and, I went back and I listened to it, and I listened to it, and I listened to it. You said a point in there where Kyle Shanahan was saying starting quarterback. In one quote, he said starting quarterback 7 times. 7 times in that one quote about, we were at 12. We liked the guy there. But, we didn't want to sit back and hope that guy fell to us like we have in previous years. We didn't want to, he was kind of throwing out like, there was a report last year that John Lynch came back from Patrick Mahomes' pro day and said, hey, Kyle, like, you should really go and look at this guy. And he's like, no, like, we're going to get Kirk Cousins type thing. And it's like, you don't do the due diligence on Patrick Mahomes, and you let him slip, and you don't do the due diligence on Deshaun Watson, because you're kind of favored to try to get Kirk Cousins when he wasn't even available. He was still technically on a team and franchised, 2 more years after that. So, it's funny that you say that, because he said 7 times for a starting quarterback. And I mean, we don't even know if, Jimmy Garoppolo or whoever's going to be alive on Sunday either, to even be on this roster, which is kind of crazy, right?
That was really funny to me, but it was also kind of Kyle Shanahan setting the tone. That was one of the things where I realized, oh yeah, they're definitely going to trade Jimmy Garoppolo, and they're going to draft Mac Jones because he kind of had his game face on it, and they were really defensive in this. And it's pretty clear that Kyle Shanahan's on an island with Mac Jones, maybe in his own building, and definitely with other experts in the field. Like, don't listen to me, don't believe Brian Peacock if you don't want to, but listen to every other expert in the field when it comes to the NFL draft. Mac Jones is easily consensus quarterback 5 in this class, and most people have Justin Fields, if not 3, then higher. Like, they have Fields closer to 1 than 5 in most cases.
Right.
Do you think that they have a trade in place already, just based on his tone in the presser? Or do you think that
I think probably they've always had a good idea that they were going to have something, because it was weird that they didn't trade him before, say, the Patriots signed Cam Newton or the Bears signed Andy Dalton. They must have had a really good idea that even though those things happened, it didn't matter. And with the Bridgewater thing to the Broncos, I thought maybe the Broncos was the most likely to be a landing spot for him, just because, Drew Lock, that would have made it fit. Maybe the Broncos weren't going to find a quarterback there at number 9, but then there was the report just about, less than an hour ago from Dale Arnold, who I want to get him right. Who is Dale Arnold? A Boston sports radio guy. And he's got a blue check mark on Twitter. And he said that the same source that gave him the info on Tom Brady signing with the Buccaneers said that the Patriots are working on a new contract extension or, pay cut or whatever it might be with Jimmy Garoppolo to try to fit a deal under the books for them. And then at that point, if they can agree on something, then the 49ers and Patriots could work out a trade. And so that would make sense, and that would line up that they need to do something like that this weekend, and they need to figure out the money, and they need to figure out the compensation, as we just saw with the Bridgewater trade, and he's taking a big pay cut, and he's basically getting backup money in Denver. And so that'll be interesting to see how much money Garoppolo actually keeps from whatever it is, the $26 million he's supposed to get this year, if he does end up with the Patriots, and what the 49ers can get, because he's got the no trade clause. I don't think it's a wide net of teams that the 49ers could trade Jimmy to. And I don't think there's a lot of teams that have that need anymore. And a lot of the teams that are looking at quarterbacks would probably be hoping to get somebody in the draft. So maybe it'll be a, after the first round thing, overnight, there's a trade done that we find out about Friday morning when the Patriots couldn't draft a quarterback and they end up with Jimmy Garoppolo. But there's not a lot of landing spots left. So the 49ers do have the cap space to keep Jimmy G. It'd probably be smart to have a stopgap quarterback for whatever rookie you draft. But when you draft a rookie number 3, they play. They almost always do. And I think Kyle Shanahan can scheme up something for any of these quarterbacks, and it would be a success in year 1 for the 49ers. We saw him do it with RG3. And to be honest, all 3 of these quarterbacks are more ready to play than RG3 was. He came from like that spread zone read thing at Baylor. And I know Justin Fields gets compared to RG3. Justin Fields is a much better prospect, period, and a lot more ready to play right now than RG3 was.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. It was kind of interesting because I don't normally pay attention to the hearsay type of things, because one, when it comes to the 49ers, I do believe that they don't have any leaks, and I believe that they don't say anything about anything going on. And that just goes back to the years and the tenures that Kyle and John have been here. And there are a lot of moves that nobody even expected to come out that we did. The DeVaris Buckner trade, Joe Staley retiring, the Javon Kinlaw pick was only mocked to us like the day of. And technically, Peter King wasn't even right on that, because when Kyle said to Debo, hey, you were our guy at 13, but somebody fell to us at 13 that we needed to get in the defensive lineman, we took that guy and we're happy to trade back up and get you. But I do kind of put a little bit of backbone to this tweet from this guy, because of the fact that there was also a tweet that was just sent out a little earlier that the Patriots were trying to trade up to 4 with the Atlanta Falcons. And I think that maybe that didn't work out. And Jimmy Garoppolo was that type of backup plan, that if we can't get the 4 to get our guy that we want, then Jimmy is fine, and plan B, to where he knows this system, he can fit right back in, and we can take off from there. And you can draft another quarterback late, to where, or you have Cam Newton there as well as a backup, getting, chump change basically for an NFL starting quarterback. But I do put a little bit of a backbone to that. You touched on these three guys, and I do agree with you that Justin Fields is by far, even Trey Lance is probably higher than what RG3 was as a prospect. I think they both have better arms. I think there's a lot that they can do. What is your difference between Justin Fields and Trey Lance, right? Because I'm kind of sold on either or, right? Because the only thing that I really want out of this and this draft is A, you get the quarterback right. B, you get a guy that's going to evolve your offense and bring another type of attitude type play to it, to where he's not just going to maneuver around in the pocket or take those hits when, I don't want a guy like Kaepernick who's going to just take off and run as soon as his first read's not open. But I do want a guy that's going to be able to get outside the pocket, continue to keep eyes downfield, and make that throw. And in my eyes, that is a Justin Fields guy compared to a Trey Lance, because I believe Trey Lance depends on his legs a lot, even though he had 28 touchdowns, no interceptions. But if you look at his rushing yards and his touchdowns, who do you think is the better fit, and what do you think the total difference is between those two?
I agree. I'm with you. It goes Fields, Lance, Jones to me, and Jones is a distant third there of those three players. I would say if Lance is the pick over Fields, it's because you believe in him from the neck up, and you believe in the smarts, and you believe in all the stories we're hearing. It's like 100% of the reports are just glowing about the guy. Everybody that meets him loves him, and he's super intelligent, and he's a hardworking guy, and he wants to be great. And I love his story of not being able to go play quarterback anywhere. And obviously he has so many skills, and, he's got nice feet, and he seems to be quick processing and getting the ball out when he needs to and making the right reads. I worry a little bit about his accuracy. He misses some throws, and I know he had the 0 interceptions, but I saw games where he, bounced balls off defenders' hands. They just didn't catch him, right? But it was still pretty amazing. Even if he threw 1 or 2 interceptions, still a great year, right? And so he's very smart. He ran some more pro-style concepts and played under center quite a bit, but you mentioned it, and I don't think he's a run-first guy. I think they just used his athleticism, right? There was a lot of scheduled runs, and he can make plays with his legs. I don't have a problem with him being a pocket-first passer and then utilizing his athletic ability when he needs to. It's just such a small sample for him, and it was on the 1AA level. That's why he's clearly behind Fields for me. He didn't face – it looked like a lot of guys – you see a lot of D1 athletes, and you see their high school recruiting tapes. That's kind of what it looked like. He's just so big and fast compared to everybody, and I don't think he's even that fast. He didn't run a 40 time. I think maybe for a reason. He might only be a 4.6 guy. He doesn't blaze 4.4 like Justin Fields does, but he might be a little bit more natural runner. I think he's more natural, has some good vision as a runner, and he uses his size as well, but he shouldn't be trying to truck people in the NFL anyway. He needs to get down and slide, and running the ball as a quarterback cannot be the main part of your weaponry as a quarterback, and Kyle Shanahan doesn't want that. He wants a pocket first guy, and then you can utilize the legs and have some fun with that and have somebody that can extend some plays, and you got to be able to throw on the run. So for all those reasons, I do like Trey Lance a lot. It's just hard for me to say you trade up to 3 for Trey Lance when you're looking at one season of 1AA ball for a 19-year-old. It's just not enough to go on. He only attempted 318 passes in his career, and even though he was under center more than the other guys, it was still only 30% of the time. So that means he had like 97 passing attempts from under center. Like that's one preseason in the NFL, right? If you played most of the preseason as a rookie, you would get nearly that. So that's not that much to go on. So you can't even lean on the pro style offense that much. I think that part of it is overrated, even though I would be shocked if that didn't play into some of the evaluation from the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan seeing that and being like, okay, they run a fullback and he lines up under center. At least that I can kind of see how that would relate to the offense I'm trying to run here in the NFL. But he's really smart. It just comes down to that. You would have to believe in the dude. He's going to work his butt off. He was, learning pro playbooks in the year he had off and going through his week as if he was preparing for game week. And, that's just, he's just wired correctly. So with his athletic ability, his big arm, his size, and you're projecting to him to get even bigger and stronger and probably a better arm as he grows and he matures as an athlete, that would be part of the projection, and just believing in the smarts, believing in the work ethic that he's going to be great. But for me, it was like, so I'll put it this way. When the 49ers were picking 12, I thought, ooh, that would be pretty nice if Trey Lance would slip to the 49ers at 12. That'd be a good fit. Maybe even the Niners can move up a little bit and get Trey Lance. But clearly Justin Fields will be gone by then. And if they draft a corner at 12, maybe in the second round, you draft Mac Jones. That's kind of how I evaluated all these guys. So there's, I think, a nice little gap between the three. And I'm blown away by the way that NFL is treating Justin Fields right now, as far as reports go and in the media. But I also have a suspicion that there are teams that love Justin Fields and are really hoping the 49ers don't take him and then are about to pounce, like, say, maybe the Patriots going up to pick 4 to try to get him. And I think a lot of people would be very happy that the 49ers go Mac Jones and allow Justin Fields to fall. And I think that's why it's so quiet on him. And I think that's why some people are leaking some things, because they actually are hoping he will fall. But we'll see. That's what makes the draft so fun. And we're going to find out a lot of these answers on Thursday night.
So you put a tweet out just asking why it's perceived that Trey Lance has the bigger upside than Justin Fields. So I saw a lot of responses saying age. I feel like that doesn't just justify upside versus the other one who has more qualifications in my mind, the 5-star recruit and everything. So what do you think drives that narrative, I guess, publicly?
I think it's the unknown is part of it. You think, well, we don't know, and he's tall and fast, so maybe there's more there. I don't know. It's really odd because Justin Fields is a freak, right? This guy's a certified freak. He's got a cannon of an arm. I don't think Lance has a stronger arm. Maybe you could project because he's a little bigger and a year younger that he'll continue to grow, and maybe instead of being 6'4", 226, he'll end up being 6'4", 245. I don't know, like out of 240. I don't know what you expect there. And maybe he'll have a tick up on arm strength as well. But Justin Fields was a pound heavier at his pro day, and he's an inch shorter. So I think that 1 inch plays a lot into people's minds. And I think the competition plays a lot, because I think the athleticism is somewhat overrated on Trey Lance. Not that he's not athletic, but when you see him run around guys and run through guys on the 1AA level, I mean, if he jumped up and played the schedule that Justin Fields played this year, it would look a lot different, and it wouldn't be running around making guys look silly, right? So I think that's part of it. Competition makes him look even bigger and faster and more imposing than he actually is. But Justin Fields, when you consider his accuracy, and he is the most accurate quarterback in this class, and his arm strength and his 4.4 speed, and maybe he's not quite as natural of a runner as far as vision and a running back goes as Trey Lance. I mean, he's got an insane package of talent, and the sky's the limit. And it's hard to find a ceiling that high. So you could argue that Trey Lance has as high a ceiling. You could argue that, one might have a slightly higher ceiling than the other. But my point was, people talk about like, oh, well, you got to draft Trey Lance because he's got this huge ceiling. It's like, well, so does Justin Fields. So that's not like a tiebreaker at all for me, for those guys. They just both have really high ceilings. And it's weird that you would look at Justin Fields and try to say that somebody else has a higher ceiling than him, because it doesn't really get much higher than that. And really with those two players, whatever happens from the neck up and their landing spot is what's going to decide if they do get close to those sky high ceilings.
Yeah.
Well, and also, sorry, Nick.
No, go ahead.
Assuming that they're going to trade Jimmy, who would you feel more comfortable starting game 1? Right? I mean, because that's what's going to happen.
It's tough. So Trey Lance, to me, the thing he's lacking is playing time. So the conventional wisdom with him is people say, oh, so he can sit for a year and then, you start him in 2022. Well, in September of 2022, he will have not played a real game since December of 2019, right? That's a long time. Like, I don't want that. He's only played 1 season. What he needs is reps. So if I draft Trey Lance, I would actually have a plan in place to have him playing. And it might not be week 1. He might need a little time. And I think most of these guys probably do. Any rookie in the NFL, it's going to be an eye-opening moment for them. But making the jump from 1AA from North Dakota State with the competition he's going to face, even though maybe his offense might look a little bit more like Kyle Shanahan's and he's smart and he can handle it, a few weeks on the bench would probably be good. But I want him to play, half of his rookie season as a starter and get those reps. I think that is really important for him, because that's the one thing he's lacking is playing time and reps. When it comes to Justin Fields, we talked about RG3, and RG3 had his best year as a rookie under Kyle Shanahan. I think Justin Fields could be better than that. Absolutely. And I think he has a super high floor, not only a high ceiling, because of that athleticism and because of his just pure natural arm talent, right? Get him on a rollout, create some space for him, let him throw these deep option routes and deep crossers and tear people up and run the ball a little bit. And you could design a system early for him to play. And I think it would be a problem for a lot of teams in the NFL. So I think I would put Justin Fields 1 as far as playing early. Trey Lance, I would want him to play early, even though he might not quite be ready to go, and he might be more of someone who's ready to play in year 2, but he still needs the reps. So I'd want him to play in year 1. And Mac Jones seems like a smart enough guy. And even though the offense, it might be overrated how pro ready, quote unquote, whatever that even means, he is. And I don't think the Alabama offense really translates all that well to the NFL. And he actually played under center fewer than the rest of those guys. I think just the way he gets the ball out quickly, I think you could put a pretty simple scheme in for him and he would be operational pretty early on, just as he was when he showed up and was forced into action when Tua got hurt and was ready to play at Alabama. He was ready to play. So I think any of these guys could play early, but I would be willing to bet money that Jimmy Garoppolo would be better than all of them, at least in week 1. That might not be the case anymore in week 16.
You talk about those 3 guys, and I got to ask you this because we've heard that, Trey Lance has worked with John Beck for a while now, right? And then obviously the 49ers asked John Beck to work with Trey Lance. But John Beck has not been working with Mac Jones. And I want to ask you, why do you think that is? Do you think it is because of the fact that Kyle Shanahan is comfortable in knowing where Mac Jones is? Or do you think it's that they're just not interested in Mac Jones? And they want to see if these 2 other guys can run their offense and choose between those 2. Because I find it funny that these reports come out that it's Mac Jones or Trey Lance. Or 1 minute it's Justin Fields and then it's Mac Jones. And so what would your thought be on that?
I think now it's pretty clear. Earlier on in the process, I thought Mac Jones was out of it. I think I put it at 55% Justin Fields, 40% Trey Lance, and 5% Mac Jones. That's the whole time I felt, this is Justin Fields. And I thought Kyle Shanahan coached him when he was a teenager. And how personal connections has been so huge for this front office for both John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan since 2017. I thought that was important. He probably saw a teenager and he's like, oh, this is a future draft pick, and loved the guy and loved the talent. And John Beck was working with him. And then since John Beck was working with him and knew it, he thought, well, the guy we know the least about that has the least data points here is the guy who played 1 year at North Dakota State, and we weren't able to scout him this football season because they only played the 1 game. So let's have him link up with John Beck, and then let's have an apples to apples comparison and someone we trust working with him, someone who's worked with the 49ers current group of quarterbacks. And so that's, to me, what signified that it for sure wasn't Trey Lance all along. I thought that was pretty obvious that Trey Lance was the guy that was added on at the end that they wanted to get more information about. So that's why they wanted him to work with John Beck. But I thought it was more so that they didn't really like Mac Jones all that much, and they knew they were set on Justin Fields because of those reasons, and then wanted him to work with the same guy that they wanted Trey Lance to work with the same guy the guy they were comfortable with was working with. But now with all the reporting and now what we know, and now hearing Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch at their latest press conference talk about things, now it's becoming more clear to me that it was Mac Jones the whole time. And you know how Kyle Shanahan is, because that was one of the striking things with this press conference is the first thing that John Lynch said. He was talking, after he talked about the Dilfer Foundation, he was talking about all the man hours that the team had put in, all the games they had seen, all the pro days, all the phone calls, all the Zoom calls, right? And all this time they put into it. But what's funny is we know that the decision came down to Kyle Shanahan watching film for 30 minutes in his office and picking the guy he liked, right? That's what the decision came down to. So I thought that was hilarious. It's like, well, good. I hope all that other time you spent works out for you in rounds 2 through 7, because it didn't matter much for round 1, because that was the guy Shanahan picked by just watching film in his office, and all those man hours and stuff didn't really matter. I don't think unless Fields or Trey Lance end up overtaking him. But the question I have now is, where is Fields in all this? Because he is not mentioned at all with he has never once been connected to the 49ers with most national media. And and I just thought that made it even more likely that it was Fields. But now, since I've started to come around and believe that it's actually Jones, and they were right, and it was Jones all along, and the other two guys were playing catch up, the only name we're hearing is Trey Lance. So where is Justin Fields in all this? That's the one thing that I keep coming back to that I can't figure out. Where is Justin Fields in this. He has to be a huge piece. He has to be close. And in my opinion, he should be ahead, but he has to be at least part of this conversation, right? Somebody in the organization has to look at Justin Fields and be like, hey, guys, what about this prospect? Shouldn't we maybe be drafting this guy? And so the John Beck thing, maybe John Beck's like, yeah, no, he doesn't quite get it. Maybe Kyle Shanahan from back in the day was like, oh, yeah, he's not really that hard of a worker. I don't really even like the kid. Maybe that's it. Maybe he knew he didn't like him all along. Maybe he just saw something on field, on tape that Fields is, a little bit too slow going through things, and he just doesn't think he has it. I don't know. But when I watch Fields, it blows me away, and he has so much talent. So that's the big question for me is I believe that Trey Lance is liked in the building. I believe that they wanted a closer look at him, and that's why the John Beck thing happened. So I believe that part of it, and I believe that Kyle Shanahan would like Mac Jones a lot from jump. But my question is, where does Justin Fields fit in all this? And I thought he was number one, and now it sounds like maybe he's an afterthought.
This is going to sound weird, right? But do you think that Kyle Shanahan's afraid to evolve his offense? And he is very stubborn in what he just wants. And, we've seen him, and the reason I'm asking this is we've seen him change the plays and the style of play on the football field between three different quarterbacks. And that's Jimmy Garoppolo, Nick Mullins, and C.J. Beathard. We've seen him run RPO with C.J. Beathard. We've seen him take Nick Mullins out and throw C.J. Beathard in, throw the ball deep. We've seen Nick Mullins more of an impact, shorter passes, a little bit more rollouts than you did with Jimmy, obviously coming off the ACL and things like that as well, but an ankle sprain. But we've seen Kyle Shanahan change his offense for whoever the quarterback is out of those three guys. Is he afraid to take it to the next level, or is he just too stubborn to do that, to where you have a guy who can keep a play alive, will upgrade that running game that you have that's already tremendous that much more?
I don't think he's afraid to. He just doesn't want to. I think there's a lot of ego involved here, which is the case with a lot of coaches, and it's not a knock on Kyle Shanahan, and he should have an ego because he's one of the better offensive coordinators in the NFL and play callers and play designers. But I think he might be overrating his own ability to scout, and we've seen that. You talked about it with 2017. He was telling people that he had three starting quarterbacks on his roster, right?
Yeah.
He was telling people they had three starting quarterbacks in Jimmy Garoppolo, C.J. Beathard, and Nick Mullins, and then two of them are now in the trash heap, and he's about to toss the third one in the trash heap, and needed 3 first-round picks to improve on the other guys. So it's weird because he'll say one thing and his actions bring him back to the other. And he said in the press conference a month ago after they made the trade that it's ridiculous that Kirk Cousins would be his prototype, and he named Patrick Mahomes and John Elway as the prototype. And then it looks like they're going to go draft the Kirk Cousins-y guy in Mac Jones, right? And how much of an upgrade is that over Jimmy Garoppolo if healthy? Not three first-round picks of an upgrade for sure. So I don't know. And I think Daniel Jeremiah put it best when he was talking about Justin Fields, and he said, look, if this guy doesn't fit your offense, maybe it's time to change your offense. And I think for Kyle Shanahan, he definitely does not look at it that way. And I don't think he wants to have a bunch of zone read concepts in there. And clearly he doesn't trust some players to throw deep, and he doesn't trust some players to run the ball. So I think he would like to have somebody that could do most of those things. But I think with how open receivers were, how good his coaching, how good his offensive line and his team was versus the opponents at Alabama, I don't think Mac Jones is the physical specimen that maybe Kyle Shanahan thinks in a player that you would draft at number 3. And it's one thing to like a player, but to draft him at 12 or trade up to number 3 for a guy who's going to end up being pretty pedestrian in NFL terms, when those windows start getting very tight and when he starts getting pressured because he doesn't have great feet and he's not good throwing on the move, I think Kyle Shanahan's going to realize quickly that he didn't really upgrade all that much from Jimmy Garoppolo.
And it cost him a lot to get there. And it's funny that you say that about Mac Jones, is because, Mac Jones is probably a specimen of that offense and those receivers that he had, and Najee Harris and a good offensive line. a prototypical college type player. I mean, Dwayne Haskins had a great year and great career in Ohio State as well. Came to the NFL and fluked, right? And that was probably a specimen of help from around him. But if you look at it, Mac Jones and Trevor Lawrence are the two highest quarterbacks with the most screen passes in college as well, compared to Justin Fields and Trey Lance. So what do you want? Do you want that guy that's going to throw those 5-yard, 7-yard passes and you just keep moving the chains? Or do you want a guy that's going to be able to throw outside the numbers, downfield when you need it, or across the field? And I think that any of these guys that come into Kyle Shanahan's system will succeed because he makes it easy on his quarterbacks with the separation the receivers get and his scheme that he does. But in the end, you said it right there. How much of an upgrade is Mac Jones over Jimmy Garoppolo? And what it costs to get there. And I think that's why everybody's really upset about Mac Jones being at 3. I think if we were still picking at 12, Mac Jones probably would be, okay, he's the new guy. Let's bring him in. He's an upgrade over Jimmy. But when you give up the future for a guy who is the same that you have in the building, maybe even a little less when Jimmy Garoppolo is healthy and knowing the system, like you gotta, they have to see that, right?
Yeah, it's a complete waste of resources because like first round picks are gold, and spending one first round pick on a pretty decent quarterback is okay. Spending 3 is insane. So this has to be a superstar. This has to be a superstar player for it to work out, and I don't think he has that ceiling. And it's hard to project someone like Mac Jones, who's capped physically versus some of these other players. And it's not saying that Mac Jones, a bad prospect, is going to be a bad player. He's just capped at what he can be physically versus some other guys. So you're projecting Drew Brees is the name that Kyle Shanahan brought up in his press conference. Well, first of all, Drew Brees wasn't a first-round draft pick. Right. And Drew Brees had a better arm than Drew Brees threw darts at Purdue. Like, I know people are looking at 38-year-old Drew Brees, and it's like he didn't have a cannon arm anymore. But the dude could throw the ball. Matt Ryan was a better prospect coming out than Mac Jones was, and he had a much bigger arm, in my opinion, than Mac Jones. And so you're projecting that this guy is so good that he is going to be a surgeon, and he's going to be a Drew Brees from the neck up. He's going to be a Tom Brady from the neck up. And those guys are just unicorns. They're outliers of outliers. And that's just something that I don't think you should have the guts to project. It's just something that's too hard to project. And there's a reason that Drew Brees was a 2nd-round pick. There's a reason that Kirk Cousins was a 4th-round pick. There's a reason that Tom Brady was the 6th-round pick. And I feel like those are good comps coming out for Mac Jones, but how many countless other players have there been like that failed, right? Think of John Beck himself as a 2nd-round pick, and he was right in that same zone of Kirk Cousins type guy. This guy's smart, gets the ball out on time, he can run my offense, all that stuff. And you realize in the NFL, it takes a lot more. So you got to be special between the years and really good physically, or you got to be special physically and really good between the years. And so I just think the climb is too steep for Mac Jones to become that star player, and I think he can be good. And by the way, we're talking about between the years, he's got the most red flags off the field as well, right? Like, so I don't know where you're banking on this guy moving up to number 3 for him. It doesn't add up to me on any level.
Yeah, so there's a lot of talk about who has final say, like in the draft. And I know Lynch said that he controls the draft. No, most people don't believe that. So the talk is that if we moved up from 12 to 3 for Jones, can any of those, Adam Peters, John Lynch, be able to talk him into a reasonable pick and not Mac Jones? Do you think Kyle would just say, no, this is it, I don't care what anybody says? Or do you think they have enough power or influence to actually change his mind?
That's a tough one because Lynch said that, contractually he does have final say on the draft. But we know that he has every time, and he said in the press conference that he would give Kyle say over the quarterback. And it's pretty clear in the organization that Kyle Shanahan is the top of the pyramid, and he's running the show, and he's gotten everything he's wanted in the draft. And a lot of those trade ups have been Shanahan's guy, and John Lynch going to get him. So the way I look at the relationship there is that Kyle Shanahan gets what he wants, and John Lynch's job is to go get that. And then Kyle Shanahan gets that thing he wants and then leaves them alone, and the scouting department goes and does the rest of their work. And so contractually, it is technically John Lynch, but I don't see them going away from Kyle Shanahan. This is Kyle Shanahan's decision. He's going to tell John who to take, and John's going to take the guy. And really, John has his job because of Kyle. Like, Kyle hired John, not the other way around, right? So Kyle Shanahan gets what he wants in this situation and most other situations when he wants a guy. That's the way I read it. Kyle Shanahan is definitely the top of the pyramid.
Yeah, it's funny that you say we keep saying 3 first-round picks, right? And it was funny because Kyle Shanahan tried to emphasize that it's not 3 first-round picks. It's only 2 first-round picks. And he was like, that's where I started getting nervous about the entire interview. And I'm like, oh my God, this is really Mac Jones. Like,
yeah,
you're going out on a leg and saying, well, just so you know, I know a team that traded 2 first-round picks for a safety, and that worked out pretty well for them. And I know a team that traded 2 first-round picks for a corner, and that worked out pretty well for them. And I hate playing against them guys. And I didn't trade 3 first-round picks. I traded 2 first-round picks and a pick next year. So it's like, I don't know if it's just Kyle being Kyle and trying to throw all these smoke screens, or if the organization is really sold on Mac Jones, or if they're just trying to keep everybody thinking that they're sold on Mac Jones. While, if we remember, none of us heard Mike McGlinchey himself, and I believe Debo said, they talked to me once. I had no idea they were drafting me. Like, they were never on the board as being drafted. Right now, obviously, Mike McGlinchey was probably kept quiet because of Trent Brown stuff and being traded on draft or the next day after draft.
Mm-hmm.
And then Debo was like, he's like, well, I talked to him once. I talked to him at the Senior Bowl, and I didn't hear anything else from them. So is this team really that good at trying to send these smoke signals and making people think they're going one way or another compared to what they're really doing?
Yeah, I kind of believed in the draft game the whole time that they were playing, and that's what led me even more. So, like, as things went on, I just thought even more it was going to be Justin Fields until the press conference. And you're right, he was very defensive from the start. And I think part of that stems from he knows that nobody likes the Mac Jones pick, and he knows that people inside the building, maybe the guy sitting next to him, doesn't like the Mac Jones pick. So I think that's been wearing on Kyle Shanahan, I'm sure, because I think he's on an island with Mac Jones. And even though he gets to pick it, he's having to fight that, and he's had to fight people in his own building, and they've had those meetings and those arguments about who to take, and he knows that overwhelmingly the fans don't like it. So that sort of defensiveness is really where it came from. And it's funny because I get that all the time on the podcast. People say that to me all the time. It's like, it's not 3 first-round picks, it's 2 first-round picks. And my response to that is, I don't care how you say it. I don't care how it makes you feel better. The 49ers are spending 3 first-round picks and a third on this one player. They could have had 4 players. They're getting 1. Say it however you want, however it makes you sleep at night. This is a massive trade. And by the way, this is a coin flip that they're trading for, not a star defender like Jalen Ramsey or Jamal Adams, who, by the way, you could have drafted him in 2017.
All Pro Bowl guys.
Right. They're guys that they're known commodities, and you're trading picks at the end of your drafts because you already have a good team. So you're sending picks in the 20s, and you already know they're late round picks for the most part. You don't know the next year's pick, but for these already star players, Kyle Shanahan is spending 4 picks, 3 firsts, and a third to go up and get a coin flip player. And when he already was picking 12, where you're supposed to be able to draft a really good starting caliber player, and there's going to be a really good player at pick 12. So I think Kyle falls into the same trap as some of my listeners and some of the folks on Twitter who keep yelling at me and saying that they traded 2 to move up. It's not 3. However it makes you feel better, but they're spending 4 picks, 3 of them first rounders on this one player. Did you see that? And I'm going to let Mike go right after this, but did you see the face that John Lynch gave when the question was asked, Kyle, what don't you like about Mac Jones? Or what do you like about Mac Jones? And Kyle Shanahan gave this weirdest look, like it was a smile, but a smirk. And it was just like, and that's where you said maybe Kyle thinks that likes Mac Jones, but John Lynch isn't sold on Mac Jones, because that face said something. I'm not sure what it said,
but it wasn't the normal. And when John started talking, he started fidgeting. He automatically looking down, fidgeting with his fingers, which he never does, touching and itching his face. Like, you could tell that he was either nervous about something or he didn't want to say too much, because usually he's too outspoken. And he was kind of held back with that whole question. He was just like twiddling with his fingers and all that stuff. So I just want to see if you saw that and if you took the same thing from that face that I kind of took.
No. So unfortunately, I only caught the whole press conference on audio. I only heard it on the radio because I was driving when it was happening. And then later on, I played it again, but I was editing some of the audio to have some pieces for the podcast. And so I wasn't really watching it very closely. So mostly what I've seen is just replays of the Kyle Shanahan talking about if Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be alive on Sunday. That's really the only video I've seen closely. But now that you mentioned that, I'm going to have to go back and watch and see if I can read some body language there. Maybe we can get some Twitter body language experts in on the case, because that's really funny. Yeah. So it made you feel like that was a tell that it was going to be Mac Jones when he was doing that?
You're on mute.
Sorry.
There you go.
It sounded like Kyle or John to me was like, he just did this like his eyes kind of went back and it was kind of and then he looked over at Kyle. And when John went to go answer questions, he didn't even look up at the question. He just said, well, and he's like playing with his thumbs and his fingers and picking at his fingers. And those are nervous tics, like for people normally. And when you're as well spoken as John Lynch is, you don't do those things. You see Garoppolo do it at the presser all the time. He's always itching his face, like touching something. So that was kind of what I took away from it. I'd really like to hear what your input is on that. So if you can go back and just watch that part or watch his facial expressions and things like that, maybe just send me a message and what your thoughts were on it, because I'm really interested to see what you think.
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely gonna check that out. Definitely a poker tell. Someone's lying if they're if they have that kind of body language going on.
Yeah.
So that's funny. Yeah, and and they've admittedly played the draft game, so that's why I think there's still a small chance that it's going to be a surprise pick for us at number 3, and maybe it isn't Mac Jones after all, or maybe they finally spent every minute they could all the way up until when they had to turn in the card to try to convince Kyle Shanahan with being okay with Trey Lance or Justin Fields. But man, it just doesn't feel like it's going that way. It really does feel, and I didn't believe it all along, but after that last presser, I really do believe it's going to be Mac Jones now. And I think it's a mistake. It's a waste of resources. He could be a good player. I don't see a superstar in Mac Jones like at all.
600 interviews, 128 pro days.
It doesn't come in handy, those 3 round picks. That's where the 49ers shine. Look, they can miss on pick 3. They're going to get a star player in round 5 anyway, so it's all gravy at that point.
Right. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, I was just going to say, initially it was just supposed to be a John Lynch press conference, and then Kyle, last minute kind of jumped into it. Do you think there's a reason behind it? Do you think perhaps he didn't trust him? Maybe he would have those tells? Because I feel like it kind of turned into just Kyle up there.
Yeah.
He pretty much controlled it.
I think they knew. I think John Lynch is like, well, this is Kyle's decision and Kyle needs to speak on it. And maybe even ownership. Maybe Jed York was like, look, dude, you're going to have to defend this pick because this is your guy. And I think that might be part of it. Maybe a little damage control there, because they've probably read the room a little bit and know the fan reaction will not be good if Mac Jones is the pick. So they probably wanted to throw Kyle Shanahan out there. And that's why he was so defensive on it. And who knows, maybe John Lynch contractually, John Lynch could make whatever pick he wants contractually, right?
Right.
Could he do that? Could he go away from Kyle Shanahan? And maybe is this something that could cause a bit of a rift? Not something major, not some bulky Jim Harbaugh thing, but it could be something that's like, man, I wanted this great quarterback and you screwed it up for me, right? And eventually you start taking those abilities away from Kyle Shanahan and be like, look, Kyle, you can't do this anymore. You don't get any more picks if you get this one wrong. I wonder what kind of conversations are going on behind the scenes. And I wonder if Kyle would allow someone like Adam Peters to be the tiebreaker, right? Or to be honest with you, I think Adam Peters' voice rings out strong. I think more it would be John Lynch is the tiebreaker, right? And it's Adam Peters versus Kyle Shanahan in all of this. And I would be team Adam Peters all day, because I think we've seen it with that work in the middle rounds and late rounds and how good the 49ers have been. And most of the Shanny type trade ups have been pretty bad. Ayuk looks like it might turn out to be a good one. But man, after what we saw the first few years, I don't think that Kyle Shanahan should have the final say on personnel. I would absolutely give that honor to Adam Peters before I would give it to Kyle with the information we have today.
Right. I have like 2 more and then we'll let you get out of here. But I have a question about your podcast because you had said something interesting in there. And you said that, the 49ers have 9 picks, but you don't think that they're going to draft 9 players because basically this roster doesn't have a lot of positions that are open for grabs, right? So my question to that is when I was listening to him, I'm like, man, I need to ask him this. How many positions do you think the 49ers draft? And what do you think are the most important positions that they need to address?
I'll give you a couple because I think one thing, especially if they do trade Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't know if they'll go out and try to find another veteran or if they think that Josh Rosen and Nate Sudfeld are good as the backups there. But we saw what happened in 2012 in Washington. What if they draft the top 3 quarterback and then come back in the middle rounds and draft another quarterback? Maybe someone like Jamie Newman. Maybe they go with the boring guy at 3 and they go with a higher upside player later and see if they strike on that. Just give them a little more depth and a backup player and another guy to develop at quarterback. So I wouldn't be completely shocked there, especially if Garoppolo is traded, although maybe a veteran would be more prudent there to be the addition to the roster if they do end up adding anybody. But corner, to me, like if the 49ers didn't trade up, we would be arguing about what corner they're going to take, in my opinion. We'd be like, okay, Horn or Surtain, which one do you like? Are they going to get there? Do you got to trade up? And then we'd also be talking about some quarterbacks, but I still wouldn't be talking about Mac Jones, right? And we'd probably be talking about how those quarterbacks are going to be gone. So maybe they could trade up. And in fact, what's funny is the day they made the trade up to number 3, less than 24 hours before, I was doing a live mock draft on the Draft Network with Trevor Sikkema, and I was in charge of the 49ers. And I had them trading up, and I had them trading up to number 6, which we know is a place that they could have traded up to. And I had them going to 6 to get a quarterback. And I thought that was unrealistic. I thought it was something the 49ers wouldn't do. And then the next day, boom, not only to go to 6, they go all the way up to number 3 and traded 3 first-round picks. So to be honest, when it comes to the draft, I haven't had a really strong connection with a lot of the 49ers picks. So I don't know what the heck they're going to do, but I've thought they've needed corners for years and they haven't really drafted them. They want D-line first. And I think judging by the trade up to get a quarterback in the first round, they probably thought that they're fine at corner, but man, I got to believe at pick 42 or maybe using one of those picks to move up a little bit. I think cornerback is going to be an absolute need for the 49ers. They need future starters. They need depth and someone who could compete to be a starter right away as well. So draft one in round 2 and draft another one in round 5. Like, I think corner is a huge need for this team, and I'd be shocked if they don't come away with 1 or 2 in this draft and probably by the second pick they make. And I think they could also close the gap a little bit if they wanted to throw one of their later round picks and move up from that 102 pick up to 40, closer to 43, because that's almost 2 full rounds. That's 60 spots almost separating those 2 picks. So maybe they see a couple guys they like on day 2. They draft one at 43, then they move up, they package a 5th with the 3rd and go up a little bit higher and draft a guy at say 75 or something like that. Like, that's something that would make sense to me. But corner, interior offensive line, Kendrick Green out of Illinois and Drew Dahlman from Stanford are 2 guys that I think could play center, to be center of the future after Mac's days are done, and then compete at guard maybe a little bit. So I think that type of player would help. I would say offensive tackle, but John Lynch did say they're going to pick up McGlinchey's option, and that was something that I wasn't sure they were going to be able to afford with how much they're paying the tackle on the other side and how much they have to pay so many other players on the roster. I didn't think that long-term McGlinchey is somebody they wanted to give a big contract to, but they still have time, and it's still a rookie deal even for that option year. It's not,
right,
huge money, and it's not long-term. So maybe they still will have to figure out another way to save some money there at right tackle. But right now he's pretty locked in there, obviously. So wide receiver, I think they need more of a downfield threat no matter who they draft, even if it's Mac Jones, probably throws a better deep ball than Jimmy Garoppolo. So that would really open things up. I think Debo, I think Ayuk can play in the slot just fine. And in fact, you might want to feature them there on 3rd downs when you go 3 wide anyway, and bring in your 3rd wide receiver who's actually more of an X, an outside wide receiver that can make people respect you deep and maybe get down the field and make some plays like that. That's the style receiver I think the 49ers need, but we know how Kyle Shanahan loves his little slot guys. And so that's probably the type of player they'll be looking for in that 3rd, 4th round range, I think. So yeah, those are, I feel like I'm missing. Oh, edge rusher. I mean, yeah, they still need edge. They have a lot of bodies at edge. And so I think maybe that's the format they're going to go with, is maybe you cross your fingers with the D Ford, but probably not. You got Samson Ebukam. You've got Armstead. They could play outside, could play inside. They brought in Arden Key. Bring in a mid-round guy, maybe a high upside project, and see if he beats out Arden Key and earns a spot and could maybe be your rotational guy. So those are sort of the positions I'd be looking at for the 49ers after round 1.
And you went right into my second question, so I don't even need to ask it, because I was going to say, is this the first year that we don't draft an edge or a defensive lineman in the 1st or 2nd round? In a long time.
I can't see it. Maybe. I mean, yeah, not in the 1st round. The 2nd round, right. I gotta still believe is corner, but this regime believes in defensive line first. So maybe they say, look, the corners we like, but there's this one edge guy we got to draft here, and we'll go get a corner later, maybe move up from 102 and get the corner there. And I could see that being a possibility because they do value defensive linemen that much. But I think the work they've done in free agency, adding some defensive linemen, and they haven't really done much aside from bringing back Jason Verrett and K'Wan Williams at corner. It sounds to me like they're gearing up for a corner, which would be the smart thing. They need youth there. They need some size and they need some athleticism. Go get yourself a starting caliber corner in this draft. If you can add that and get a star quarterback, I think they'd be doing pretty darn good.
Mike, you got anything else, bud?
No. Well, not really. I appreciate you coming on. I will say that you're probably one of my favorite podcasts. I listen to it mostly, when I'm on my way to work. Your voice is built for the radio. It's like custom fit. So yeah, just thanks for joining us. Yeah.
Absolutely. I had a good time, fellas. Thanks for inviting me on. Yeah,
Brian, I really appreciate it. Once again, if you can go back and look at those facial things and let me know, I'd be highly interested in hearing what you have to say. Callie did do a contribution here, so I do want to mention this. He says, Kyle and John clearly stated they wanted players of high character. Was that just lip service? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, Mac Jones, obviously, we said, has a lot of red flags. Does he have some character issues?
Yes. So, I mean, of any of the guys, it would be him. There's a video actually in the last 24 hours or so I saw pop up on Twitter with Mac Jones at a club somewhere, and he's got his shirt open and he's saying something about a or something. But he's trashed or whatever. But I'm sure all these guys, cut loose and do their thing, whatever. But he looks like he drinks a lot, right? He looks like someone who drinks a lot and doesn't work out, and he's got DUIs in his past, and it's like you got to do a lot of work on that. And with the 49ers history with Alabama players too,
right?
You trust anybody there, and I think that would have been a huge thing for this regime. And maybe they got great reports. Maybe there's someone there that they trust. But man, he either did not visit the weight room very often at Alabama, who has maybe better facilities than most NFL teams, or he was working out and he still looks like that, which would be even a bigger red flag, right? Like, how is he going to age? Is he going to have this complete switch like Tom Brady did and become the healthiest guy in the NFL? Is that driven? I have some reservations there, off field, on field, as far as Mac Jones being a guy that you would invest a number 3 pick on, and especially not 3 first-round picks. Like, there's definitely red flags there for me with off-field stuff. And look, just going out and partying and being drunk in a video is not a big deal. But when things get put together, you can see how there could potentially be a pattern there. So you better have someone you trust that knows him well, and you better be doing the background on that for sure.
Yeah, and Graf and Kick says here, you can't trust Nick S. He lied about Ruben.
We talked about that on the latest Locked On 49ers with Eric Crocker, and Crocker brought up a good point, because even publicly, not even privately, and I don't know what was said privately between Nick Saban and the 49ers, publicly, he said, look, if you're looking for a choir boy, that's not your dude. But if you want a badass football player and he's going to go light up running backs, then he's your guy, and he'll give it his all on the field. And I think we saw that. But here's the other thing is, every other team in the NFL knew enough about Reuben Foster and that they didn't touch him. And the 49ers, that was just a naive moment from a young front office, I think. And I think there's still some naivete from the 49ers front office with, as we've seen with this trade up to number 3, it was just sort of felt unnecessary timing wise. It felt like a lot to give up. And when you hear Kyle Shanahan talking about it, I think he's really the driving force there. And it's not surprising that a coach would care less about draft picks than maybe the lead scout would, because that's a lot to give up, and maybe still some growing pains with this front office. And the Reuben Foster Alabama thing, I think it's more fun just to poke fun at Nick Saban than there's actually anything real to it. I think that was more on the 49ers not trusting the background and realizing they shouldn't screw around with people with some character issues. They learned that with Joe Williams too, who quit I think 2 different football teams and then never ended up playing it down in the NFL, even though Kyle Shanahan couldn't sleep if they didn't draft him. So hopefully they'll continue to learn those lessons. Hopefully they get the 3rd pick right, because this is massive and they're not going to get many more shots if they don't get this one right.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Brian, man, I really appreciate you. I know we said like 30 minutes, but the conversation kind of just went on, so I apologize.
It happens, man. That's the time we're in. We're fired up about this 49ers draft, and I feel it. So, yeah, it's no biggie at all.
Yeah, I'm just definitely – I've been saying I'm just so ready for it to be over. This has seemed like the longest offseason. Obviously, not being able to attend games last year, it didn't feel like a real football season. The pandemic and here we are, the 49ers make a massive move, and it's just like speculation everywhere. Tomorrow can't come fast enough. I'm super excited, but I'm super stressed out. My blood pressure has been crazy through the roof anymore. I've been drinking a lot more beer like Mac Jones, I guess you could say. But, in the end, man, we got to trust what Kyle and this front office decide. And if it's the right pick, it's the right pick. If it's the wrong pick, he's going to hear it. And like you said, I believe that they won't be picking in 2024 if this is the wrong pick. So I do agree with you on that. But once again, I appreciate your time, coming on with us. And hopefully maybe sometime after the draft we can get you on and we can talk about the draft and what your thoughts were on the whole entire draft. And, I appreciate it. It's an honor. Keep up the great work over there. Always listening, to your stuff. So appreciate you, man, once again. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It was fun. And you think the off season has been long now? Wait till the draft is over, and then we have to wait for training camp to start.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, 100%. Guys, make sure you guys give Brian Peacock here, Locked On 49ers, a follow. Go to any social media or podcast avenue, and you can listen to that as well. And you can find him on Twitter at BD Peacock. It's right there at the bottom of the screen as it's been going on as well. And you can also go over and check out the Peacock and Williamson podcast. That is also on Spotify. Is it on Spotify? Right?
Yeah, it's everywhere. Yeah,
everywhere.
Locked On Podcast Network. Anywhere you find podcasts, you can find Locked On 49ers or Peacock and Williamson. On Peacock and Williamson, former NFL scout Matt Williamson. You might have seen his work at ESPN. We break down the NFL every day. So it's what we do on the network, daily podcasts coming at you on the NFL and the 49ers specifically.
Nice. Brian, really appreciate it, man. I hope you and your family are staying safe throughout this whole thing. I hope you have a great evening. And we really appreciate it, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was fun, guys, and enjoy the draft.
Yes, sir.
Thanks a lot. You too.
Guys, that's it for us, man. What a great show we are, Brian, bringing us tonight, and we appreciate you guys, man. One more day left, faithful. That's all. One more day. So above all else, stay faithful. We're out of here.